On this channel, $1 Million Made Easy, we love to run numbers for people. We use the actual historical returns, the S&P 500 for the last 100 years, which includes the depression years. We project ahead what similar returns might do for you in the future. They won't be identical, they won't be exact. The resulting numbers are simply a possible range of what may happen in the future. I'm not a financial advisor, just a numbers guy, but I will run numbers for you. Just ask in the comment section of these videos. But please restrict requests to the following criteria. This case, I have somebody that we're going to be looking at the accumulation stage. They give me their beginning balance, their monthly contribution, and how long they want me to run it for. Again, I got a shorter run here from 12 to 17 years. I like it when I can catch 25 or 30 years till retirement, but let's go ahead and run the numbers. I'm going to run it for the 17-year period. This individual says they're 45 years old. They have 515,000 saved up in their TSP. Again, I'm assuming you can invest this in the S&P 500. That's the only thing we do in this channel is use the S&P 500 numbers. He says, what do you think my balance will be in 12 or 17 years? He's saving $1,400 a month. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Again, like I said, we run the numbers for every single year for the last 100 years. So I'm going to go ahead and update this. This is going to show it for every single year for the last 100 years, which includes the depression years. I've got those kind of highlighted right there. But we're going to look at all the numbers, and we're going to be specifically looking at the 15 and 17-year column. As you can see here, where you're looking at the 15-year column here, this is the actual graph. You can see it was really a bumpy road if you look at the 1928 numbers, which I've got highlighted right here, where you can pick any year you want to look at the graph. 1924, you can see the dropping down. You had 5 good years, and you had 4 down years. That's knocked it down. You ended up with 2 million, let's see, 20 years, 15 years, 2,096,000. That's what we look at 1926. But I want you to notice 98% of the time in a 15-year period, given these numbers that he gave me, you'd have $1 million. 87% of the time, you'd have 1.5 million. That's color coded in blue going down through here. And 70% of the time, you'd actually be at $2 million. Now, watch the difference if we go from the 15-year to the 17-year period. I want you to notice right off the bat, the worst case scenario for the 15-year period is 974,000. But just 2 years later, the worst case scenario in the last 100 years will be 1.387. Let's go ahead and click on that. You can see the graph again has these down years that knocked it way down, but look how it came back to the point where they have 1.387 in the worst case scenario. Here you have 100% of the time getting to $1 million, 98% of the time you get into 1.5 million, and 81% of the time getting to 2 million. Here's a problem with running it for 12 years. He asked me, he's 45, I want to know where he might be in 12 years at age 57 and age 62 would be 17 years. I don't like to run it really for much less than 25 years, but since he's 45, he doesn't have that long. So I'm going to go ahead and run the numbers. But I recently created this spreadsheet that probably helps a lot of people see what I'm talking about here. So again, we've got 515,000. That's what I do on this channel. I love to create spreadsheets to kind of illustrate some of the numbers that we look at. In this case, we're looking at what happens if you're just do it for a short term. For example, this 12-year period right here. Even though you start with 515,000, after 12 years, he would have put in $716,600, but there's actually a year in there where he wouldn't even have back what he put in. Look at that, folks, 638,000. Again, this is the worst case scenario. It only happened this one time here. The worst case scenario, we had only 638,000 to show for that, what you put in 716,000. We go down to the 17-year period, you put in 800,000, then the worst case scenario is $1.387 million. In the 17-year period, worst case scenario, oops, I picked the wrong one here. Worst case scenario, you put in 800,000, got 1.387. You can see the same numbers right here for the 17-year period right there. The fifth lowest, what this means is 5 of the last 100 years would have this amount or less. And this is 10 years. So in other words, 90% of the time you do better than this. But the worst 10-year period in the last 100 years, this is what you'd have after 17 years. You'd have 1.893 million. And the range would be from 1.387 up to 1.893. The median in that column you're going to find is be 3.665 million, and it was actually the maximum of 10 million. I always like to show the difference between like even 12 to 17 years makes a huge difference. Obviously, you put in a little bit more between the 12th and the 7th year, but look at this. The 12th year, you'd only have 638,000 to show for it. The 17th year, again, this is the worst case scenario. You'd have 1.387, which is basically double that. So in other words, the longer you can be in it, the better the numbers are going to look. That's why I love to run numbers for somebody that has a lot longer period of time. For example, just look at this. You put in $1 million, the worst case scenario. Let's look at the 30-year period. Put in 1,019,000 and look at this. The worst case scenario, you'd have 9.862. That's the worst. But that shows you the benefit of being in it for the long term. Why? Because the market inevitably comes back. You can have bad decades, but then it comes back with these kind of net returns. Even the year 2000 had 3 down years and down 37, but look how it came back after that. 1973 and 74 were down years, but look how it came back, up 37, up 23, and then we had the 80s and the 90s, of course. But again, I just love run numbers, and I really like it when you have at least 25 years. But in this case, the individual is 45 years old. He wanted to see what his numbers would look like. So in the 17-year period, looks like the worst case scenario to have 1.387. Let's go ahead and do one more thing here. I reset these numbers here to show you the 17-year column here. This is the graph going up and down and ending up over here. But I want them to see that 98% of the time in the last 100 years for a 17-year period, putting in this kind of money, you would have $1.5 million. That's color-coded in green. 81% of the time, color-coded in blue, you'd actually have $2 million. And 65% of the time, color-coded in gold, you have $2.5 million. There's a huge difference between 12 years and 17 years. But he wanted to know where he might be at age 57 and also at age 67 or 62. So that's what we did. We ran the numbers, but hopefully you see how troubling it can be for running it only for 12 years as opposed to 17 years. There is possibility for that 12-year period to put in this kind of money and only have this much to show for it after 12 years of putting it in the S&P 500. Again, this is a worst case scenario here, but down here, at least the worst case scenario, you've got some improvement. You go from 800,000 that you put in to 1.387. Again, the rest of these numbers we already touched upon, but that's what we do on this channel. We run numbers for people. If you want me to run numbers for you, just give me these criteria and please keep to these criteria and I'll go ahead and run numbers for you. Please consider subscribing to this channel, sharing, liking, commenting, telling your friends about this channel. Tell them there's a channel out there that will run numbers for them. And I want to thank you for watching.